Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of the Level Up Hour here on OpenShift TV. I am Chris Short, the host and executive producer of this wonderful channel, I guess is what they call me now. And I am I work here at Red Hat on the OpenShift team with the one and only Langdon White. Langdon, good morning. How are you this week?
Good morning. Not too bad. Not too bad. I'm as I often say, I'm making progress towards caffeinated.
Yes,
but I did want to show off my shirt today.
Oh,
There is a I'm gonna blank.
oh.
There's a hackathon
Mhm.
put on by Boston University that I just blinked on the name of. Tech Together. That's what it is. Which is one of the few. Let's see, non-binary or women-only hackathon. And in advance of that, they actually do this thing they call pre-hacks, where they basically get like high schoolers who've never participated in a hackathon before, give them like a day or two before the hackathon to kind of learn how to do a hackathon, and then they go and do the hackathon. So I like the program, so I'm wearing the shirt. And now I can see myself in your background. Oh, I'm gone.
You're gone. Sorry.
No worries.
So yeah, awesome. That's great to hear. Is it virtual this year? These hackathons, I've seen a few of them. I've done some looking recently, and it's like I've seen some events that have gone back to in person, and it's kind of scary to me. That's just my 2 cents. But yeah,
I'm
is it
with
virtual? Can people sign up?
It is. It's actually in November. I'll
Okay.
even put it in the chat. Maybe.
Thank you. That was
finding technology.
Yeah.
But yeah, November 6th through 8th. If you are, you can be a coach, and you can be of any gender, or like a judge or a coach or like a helper.
Helper, yeah,
of any gender. And actually, they put it as all female, femme, and non-binary hackathon. And it's kind of amazing to see 800 kind of women doing tech stuff. There have been a bunch of cool projects. Like one year, they did the one I particularly remember. I have this term. So if you live in the inner city, you take public transit a lot.
Yeah.
Less so currently, but in theory. And one of the plagues of public transit is knowing when your transportation is coming, right?
Right.
That's the easy one. So that's mostly solved by apps like Transit. But there's another plague, which is what's called a ghost bus. At least that's what I call it. I think she had another term for it, which I can't think of now, but it was better. But it was that's when a bus is supposed to be coming, but doesn't actually exist. And so you're standing at the stop waiting for the bus per the app that tells you that a bus will be here any minute, and it never shows up.
Yeah, that would suck.
And so she was doing an app that was crowdsourcing whether a bus was a ghost bus or not, so that basically the stops before you could report that the bus never came, and it never existed, so that you wouldn't be standing there waiting for the bus because somebody prior on the line would report that it was a ghost bus. So I thought it was really cool. I thought the projects in general were really cool. Typical hackathon, they're usually like a really good first draft,
Right.
But they also give out an award for biggest fail, which those are the ones that are often the most
interesting. Oh,
yeah, it's kind of like our Twitch shows.
Yeah, I wonder if we could have a biggest fail Twitch show every quarter.
Right, that'd be cool.
Like a quarterly like fail show.
Right.
Oh, we've had a couple, right? Like it's no big deal, right? Like we've had shows that ended with stuff not working, and then literally 20 minutes later, oh, it's this one thing, everybody.
Right.
Twitter.
I think we've had that on this show, in fact.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that sounds like an awesome event. I would love to tell you what, I'll do some more research and I'll read about it, and I'll probably share it in my newsletter maybe. We'll see if I remember. Let me definitely do the share thing now so it gets out to my social feeds and everything, and I have it saved.
Well, I wanted to pitch one more thing, which is DevConf US, which is a conference that Red Hat supports.
Mm-hmm.
There's being a corporation, it's kind of hard to take money, right, for a lot of things. So So we don't take a
channel
lot
included. Yeah.
Right. So so if it's not in your kind of core business, it's kind of weirdly, it may not make sense to somebody who's not versed in how corporations work, but it's actually a little difficult to take money for things that aren't actual like things that you sell, right?
Products. Yeah.
So
services, yeah.
We do a conference every year called DevConf, and we actually do several of them. There's a DevConf Czech Republic,
CZ,
which is the
yeah.
first one, and that was started 11 years ago. I think this will be the 12th actually upcoming. And that's in January. And then we do one in India as well, which is actually usually right around August, but virtual has made everything crazy. And then there's also the one I happen to help run, which is DevConf US, which
Awesome.
is in about 2 weeks. It's on the 23rd. There's workshops, and then 2 days of talks, and it's all about it can be anything, but it tends to be, because it's Red Hat sponsored, it tends to be the upstream projects we're involved in. So, for example, there's talks about Podman, which we've been talking about a lot here. There's talks about CoreOS or Fedora CoreOS, right? There will be talks about OKD. Does OKD actually officially stand for anything?
It is the upstream of OpenShift.
Right. But it doesn't actually have an expansion, right? It's just OKD, kind of like KFC is now.
Yeah.
So there's talks about all the containery things. There's talks about the cloudy things. And the way I actually arrange the tracks is it's about, we do talks about like things that run a cloud versus things that run on a cloud, right? And so the things that run a cloud might be like OpenStack or OpenShift.
Very nice
and then
distinction. Yes.
Things that run in the cloud, right? Like an application, because the people who go to see those talks aren't necessarily the same. So we have a pretty good lineup. I'm going to throw that link in the.
I already did it for you. I got the.
Oh, you did. Oh,
US.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We also have just devconf.us as well, because
that's where it took me though. It took me to this URL. Yeah.
That's because we manage the whole site as one thing.
Right.
So check it out. We don't usually get a huge number of people, but it's a great way to meet Red Hat engineers. It's a great way to meet, kind of other people in the open source community, because it's basically it has to be open source. It can't be product facing or product based. It can't be product pitches. I think we have a lot of good stuff this year. But again, virtual. So you can also watch it on demand if you like.
Which is very cool.
It is very nice. Although DevConf actually has a very strong history of failing, aside from failing technology or whatever, we record everything we run and then make playlists on YouTube of it all. So you can go and see any of it at any time. And a lot of it's really interesting. So those are my pitches for the day.
I appreciate those pitches. Those are both good ones. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah. No. So the only pitch I have is that they're, from the CNCF side of things, being a CNCF ambassador, EnvoyCon's coming up. It is to a virtual event. These virtual events do cost money to throw, as we learned with KubeCon. They spent a lot of money on that. So EnvoyCon, if you're not familiar with Envoy, it is literally the thing underneath all the service meshes now. So
right. Kind of a useful thing to take a look at.
If you're not familiar with EnvoyCon is the cheapest you're ever going to get into it, right? $50. And if you need help with it, I'm a CNCF ambassador. Let me know. I can probably get you some help if you're definitely if you're working in the community and you want more knowledge, and please feel free to reach out and I can help you get in.
That is definitely a misnomer. I mean, I'm experiencing the same thing with DevConf, right? Yes, it's significantly cheaper not having a venue, but we still have to pay for all the software.
There's still money to be spent.
Right, exactly. And so,
there's no food, but they upcharge you now because they know there's no food. It's like a wedding almost, right? Like they know that you're going to spend a lot of money on this now because of the situation you're in. It's called market economy, right? Like that's the problem with the whole situation right now is that, the whole reason we started OpenShift TV, we need to reach people more effectively, more cheaply, more, there's a very
virtually. Now it's not even so much about the money as much as it's about the how do we connect with people when we don't want to physically connect?
How do we connect with people in a natural way? And charging you money is not a natural way to do that, right? So that's why we started this, right? Like getting you to register for something is not a natural way to just have a conversation with you, right?
Exactly.
that's why we started OpenShift TV. And, that's kind of why you're here, is to get people into these things. And that's what this show is for. And I kind of wanted to touch on a hot-ish button issue right now, and the fact that Docker Hub has, or kind of, said we're going to start, rate limiting or paring down what we're storing on Docker Hub. And, a tool that we haven't talked about, but is definitely in your wheelhouse, Skopeo, and how that might help folks transition from a Docker Hub to maybe a private repo, or, any of these other repository services like Quay. Or
I was actually going to talk a little bit about Quay today. Because one of the things that, basically some of the topic of the show today, and maybe we should start there, and maybe we should kind of move into it. But it is basically the distribution. Okay, so we made all these, helper containers, the toolbox containers, the whatever. But how do I move them around?
Yeah, now I have this container image on my box. Right. I want to share it, or I want to store it, or I want to make it HA or whatever, right?
Like, exactly. Nobody ever wants HA. I just realized I didn't actually log into my Delio. Hold on just a sec.
Your Delio.
But then I can start.
Which Delio did you log into?
Zoom.
You didn't log into
No,
Zoom?
my SSH. I just didn't SSH to my machine yet. So, but let me go ahead and share my screen.
And if no one is familiar with my T-shirt, set enforce 1 is an SELinux command, and we encourage people to leave SELinux on. And the next time you will see this T-shirt is when Dan Walsh is joining us on the channel on the 24th. So subscribe to the calendar if you're not already, and Dan Walsh will be on the channel soon.
Yeah, isn't there
there's a brand new show.
Website?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well,
yeah. Well, yeah. There's a website.
Go ahead. You talk about the show, and then I will talk about the Set Enforce 1 website.
Yes. So there is a website for the T-shirt where you can buy it. The new show that's coming up is called In the Clouds with Red Hat Leadership, and it's actually starting this week. Yes, the 10th. And we'll have Joe Fernandez on, and that'll be an interesting show because Joe Fernandez is the VP of, oh gosh, I forget his official title. Oh boy,
Cloud
everything, right? Like, it's like VP of cloud platforms and blah blah blah, right? Like, so like super VP and GM of core cloud platforms. There we go. So that is kind of a big deal, and if your CIOs are interested in what Red Hat might be doing, or your directors or your boss or whoever, that would be a good show to like recommend they tune into, because we're helping you get the tech done, help them get the culture done, right? Like that, I think, is going to be the next piece of this big puzzle of transitioning to a cloud native infrastructure, is getting everybody on the boat, right? Right, not just Captain Cube and Fippy and Z, but like Fippy's boss and Z's boss and Captain Cube's boss. They all need to be on the boat as well.
Exactly. So so this is the website I was thinking of. It is Stop Disabling SELinux. Yes. It is put up as it says down at the very bottom in small letters, a public service from Major Hayden, who, when the site went up, was not a Red Hat employee, but now is a Red Hat employee.
Interesting.
And is this the T-shirt you're wearing? No, this is a slightly different one.
Yes.
But as you can see, it does make Dan Walsh cry.
That is a very young picture of Dan Walsh.
Is that from his? Oh, so he had a blog on LiveJournal for a long time, which I was kind of like, okay, all right. So Major Hayden, as Spot says in the chat, Major rocks. Major is a big contributor, I guess, to OpenStack, right?
Yeah.
And very involved in that community. He's also very involved in the Fedora community, which is where I know him from. So every time you set enforce 0, you make Dan Walsh weep. And
I've seen
joking aside, there's a lot of tools in kind of the RHEL flavors of Linux, right, that help you discover why SELinux is angry with you. And using those tools makes it much easier to quickly discover like why whatever it is isn't working. So whenever I run into a problem that is, that seems to be kind of security related, I kind of, in some sort of controlled fashion, right? I turn off the firewall, I turn off set enforce, or I turn off SELinux, and then I kind of slowly add pieces back until I figure out what the actual problem is. Then I can fix it. Then I can put it back online.
So this is very much, and I pardon the dog, this is very much how I stood up services in the military back in the olden days, the early 2000s, was we would establish that unsecure connection and put nothing over it but a test signal, then layer on the security and layer on the additional circuits, like the individual services and everything else that are also individually encrypted, but we would start with the clear, zeros and ones, add encryption, add security layer in depth, that kind of thing, and then go from there, right? Like this SELinux, you should take very much a similar approach to, right? Like leave it on, set things to its, back to where they should be as you modify files, right? Like there's a single command that you can just apply to, like if you just put a bunch of stuff in your HTML directory, for example, under your web server, it's just this, I think it's set recon or something.
Yeah.
And you just apply this one command and it's done. And like, I love the fact that Christian Hernandez's like helper node, like has that in there, because he never turns off SELinux, and he builds this amazing node that stands up OpenShift for you. And it's all done with SELinux turned on.
In fact, you can go watch a Twitch show about that, as I recall.
There's actually a bot command that will help everybody remember it, called helper node. And you can go see the show itself right there. Yes.
Right.
And,
So always set enforce 1. I'm actually super impressed with myself. I literally almost never, I never have it off now more than an hour or two. So it's really, it has gotten so much easier to actually do the right thing, and so we strongly encourage you to do the right thing. All right, so should we start talking about distribution?
Yes, let's talk about image distribution.
Okay, so let's first talk about what that means a little bit first. So when you create a container image, what you're getting is largely, in fact, a tarball. And if you are unfamiliar with tarball is a very ancient term that represents basically a set of files. So if you're relatively new to computing, someone might think of like a zip file, right? So except a tarball by default doesn't actually have any compression. So a zip file by default has compression. Tar is also fully open source, unlike zip, although it may be now, but zip used to be actually have a license on it that you actually weren't supposed to use it as much as everyone did.
Right. Yeah.
But
it's better now.
Yeah, I think it might have gotten fully open sourced somewhere along the way. But there's actually better compression algorithms now, et cetera. So, if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely check out something like XZ, which has a very good compression algorithm.
Super tight binary. I mean, I love XZ, but
yeah, particularly for binaries. It's not as good with text, but
yeah, I mean, text just gzip9 and let it rip, right? But
right.
If you got binary blobs, PDFs, images, all that stuff, that you need to XZ will compress the bejesus out of it. Yeah,
exactly. And actually, all of our, almost, I would say, maybe not universally, but pretty much all of our major image distributions of any kind. So it might be a Fedora ISO, or it might be or it might be a container image, or whatever, are almost all compressed. With XZ, because of how nice a job it does on binaries. So tarball, basically just a file structure. So if we did let's see, if we have new Blender render in here, we just say tar minus C, which is create, F, which is the file name we want to make, and then we're going to just call it cow because I name everything cow. And we just say I want everything here. Did I do something wrong? Oh, sorry, not dot, star. Yeah. It seems to dislike my commands because it's a day.
Wait. You got the file name, okay, and then it should.
It worked. It just gave me a weird error. Yeah, I think like tar's been around a really long time.
There's actually an XCKD or XKCD comment about tar and how.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'll find it when
Okay.
you're hacking away here. But yeah, there's one about tar. It's actually quite hilarious. Yeah.
So the thing about tar is that when you just kind of do everything by default and you throw like just a star, it keeps the directory structures, which is really important on Linux, right? Because on Linux, everything is a file. So keeping directories and all that jazz is really important to how it works. So if you look at a container image, it's basically just a tarball that I don't even know if it's compressed. I think it must be, but so what happens is it's kind of basically the root file system of whatever the container is that you wanted to create. So once you have that tarball, great. What do you do with it? Well, okay, so that's where the problem is, because if you look at my Podman images, they're decent sized. And there's definitely some complaints about that, right? I mean, you can do things like Alpine or whatever, and some of those will be smaller. There's a lot of effort, I know, within like the Fedora community to make smaller libraries. There's actually one called Fedora Minimal. And of course, I'm going to fail. What?
Yeah, because everybody fails the first time they do a tar command.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole comment.
I actually don't know why that broke. No. Although it could show us a little bit about how the containers work on Linux. We can look at registries.conf, and this kind of goes into what we're talking about.
Pointing at a line on the screen, and like everybody else will know what I'm pointing at. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So by default, Fedora registry is not listed on a rel box. That's why it's not finding Fedora minimal. So let's fix that for the sake of discussion. And I'm going to guess the name and hope I'm right.
Oh God.
Right?
Do you want me to test it first?
Well, we could.
I mean, just say the name, and I can curl it at the very least.
I think it's registry.fedoraproject.org. I think is all it is.
That sounds right. Fedora project, if I can type, .org.
Yeah.
That is a 302, which makes sense because it goes to the HTTPS. That is a valid URL.
That works.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I want to point out before we kind of... Oh, go ahead.
Just to let people know what I did a curl-I on registry.fedoraproject.org, which said, oh, it's a 302, which is a redirect to the HTTPS version. I then did a curl-I to that HTTPS version, and then it then gave me a ton of information about what is running at that. It gave me the headers of whatever was responding at that URL. So I could tell this is definitely a Fedora capital I.
Capital I.
Yes, that gives you just the headers. So if you see here, it tells you the proxy server, the request ID. So there's clearly some aggregation happening here, and something's listening here. So basically, to me, it makes sense based off what I know about containers and the Fedora project and the way they distribute everything. Registry.fedoraproject.org. This verifies that something is working because you got a 200. So something should respond with some kind of error code if it's not the right thing. There you go. That's how I see if things are real on the internet or not.
Yeah, and if you really want to be a jerk, you could always nmap them.
Yeah, so I do this first, and then I nmap. If it's suspicious, because you can tell if this is a suspicious URL sometimes just by doing this. So if you're worried about like a shortened link or anything like that, curl-I shortened link will tell you what it expands out to, and then you can just go to that. If you're worried about something not being like right or whatever, So yeah, like totally use that to your advantage. Yeah, exactly. If you do that here, it'll tell you, oh, it's actually
a 302.
A 302 to this page, which is redhat.com.
Although I think
that's
that's because
weird.
I've typed the form wrong.
Yeah.
I think I typed the URL wrong. I
Unsafe
have like a
URL
mental block.
referrer policy. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
fine.
Just kind of a quick sidebar. Somebody brings up Jim Jones in the chat.
Yes. So I said, remember, Narendev, don't drink the Kool-Aid when you're going to all these meetups, right? Like, be careful. Kool-Aid is not a ubiquitous term, apparently, in the world. So now we're talking about cults, which is one of my least favorite discussions. Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, and actually, Tillmore has explained the origin. Although I will say it is cool with a K because it's
Yes.
that cool, not cool
It
with a
is
C.
cool. And Kool-Aid is still a popular drink here in the US, as is the Kool-Aid Man. There's a commercial floating around on the Nickelodeons about Kool-Aid Man trying to play hide and seek right now, and it's rather comical, but not
Oh,
that
really? I don't think I've
yeah.
seen that. I might have to go find that myself.
Yeah.
So though that slight digression.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I wanted to point out though before we moved on was this where I put in Fedora. If you notice, I kind of stuck it in the middle. And the reason I did that is because it searches these in order, and it will, by default, if you don't like fully qualify the target that you're looking for, it's gonna find the first one that it finds and use that first. So in other words, there is a Fedora in the Docker IO registry.
Yep.
But normally, almost always, when I want to pull Fedora, what I want to do is actually pull that from Fedora project directly, not from Docker. So, and that's kind of legacy of when the Fedora project didn't have a Docker registry. So, it kind of made sense to have it in Docker IO. But this way, if I just type Fedora, like Podman pull Fedora, I will get the one from Fedora project rather than the one from Docker.io. Excuse me. And the same is true for any of the Red Hat ones as well. So if I pull HGVD, for example, unadulterated,
Unfettered.
Unfettered,
Yeah.
I will actually get the one from Red Hat rather than the one from Fedora or the one from Docker. And depending on the scenario I'm in, I may want to do different things, right? But in the case of this RHEL box and for this show, I want to pull from Red Hat first, and all other second, right? But I also want to put Fedora as a higher priority than whatchamacallit. The other thing to point out here, though, is that a nice thing about Podman, so if you install Docker on RHEL or on Fedora, although the package naming has gone back and forth because they changed the name to Moby for a while and now it's back to Docker, and I don't know. But the thing to remember is this file is editable and immediately consumable or consumed by Podman when you run the next command. But in Docker, you have to restart the daemon to get it to pick up the registry change. So just kind of keep that in mind. They operate slightly differently that way if you're, if you're ever using Docker and need to modify your registries. So there's a bunch of other stuff in that containers directory. Probably the most interesting thing for kind of this crowd is looking at the storage configuration, which we'll kind of mention a little bit, but we weren't going to go into that too much.
Yeah, not today.
Yeah. But basically, you have a bunch of different ways that you can store. So remember I mentioned the containers are basically tarballs. Well, those tarballs can be stored on disk in different ways. So the cheapest and easiest but probably most dangerous way is basically as a loopback device. But then I think the default now is actually to use this thing called overlay FS, which basically allows, if you notice when we build an image, let's see if I've got one I can show quickly. S1. Oops.
And
so if we
just
do,
a quick shout out to my father-in-law that's working in the basement right now here. He's installing an outlet for me. None of this show would be possible without him, because he is the person that was able to manage to fish a Ethernet line down from upstairs to the office here so that I could get hardwired across the office and bring this show to you. So thank you, father-in-law, who will remain nameless for privacy reasons.
So if he's an electrician, actually, I could use him here if you could just send
Yeah,
him.
he is a certified electrician. Most of Columbus, Ohio, the downtown of that, he wired. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, no, I need it here in Boston, so if you could just send him out, that would be great.
I mean, he's here in Detroit, and we've told him he can't travel. So
Right.
yeah, no.
Yeah. So the reason we use a file system that is an overlay file system, and overlay in this sense means basically it only changes things when they are changed. So in other words, you do a layer of the file system and then you put something on top of it, hence the overlay, and then you get differences between them. And basically that's what supports. Why? I thought I already built this here. Oh, no.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay.
But the point is, each of these steps here is a layer in the container image, and that's supported by OverlayFS. This has gone back and forth of what file system to use for this. I can't even remember what the original one was, but OverlayFS is now in the kernel and is used by, I believe, Docker and Podman.
Yes. It was built by Docker, I believe.
OverlayFS? No, it was a separate one.
They
had a different one, but it wasn't. It had never.
No, that's what I'm talking about. The one, the previous one. It was built like by Docker for.
Yeah, I think that might be right. But the point is, it never made it into the kernel for a bunch of reasons. I don't remember the details.
But anyways,
well, this other one, OverlayFS, which had actually been sitting around for a while, and was just kind of like hanging out. Got reinvigorated and then made it into the kernel, and so it got adopted. Cockpit. Oh, one of my other favorite things.
Yes, but I'm talking to Narendev about that to help him out.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So now we have this tarball. So what we want to do though is we want to distribute it around, right? So we want to get it to. So then, much like a Linux repo or repository, in container land, we talk about essentially the same idea, except it's called a registry. And you will actually often hear me say like the word repository when I mean registry, because they essentially serve the same function. The biggest difference being that with a registry, you can push to it. Whereas a repository, like a Linux repository, either a Yum repository or Debian or whatever, you can't normally push to it. There are some very.
And then there's Git repositories which break everything.
Right, and then you have a Git repository which just completely screws everything up, which isn't even really kind of core central to Git in a sense. That's what the Git forge has brought. Yeah, so. When we talk about registries, there are several available on the interwebs. And the one we were talking about at the beginning, which was easily the most popular for a long time, was Docker Hub, which has gotten increasingly hard to actually find the container images in.
Yes.
Not that I'm bitter or annoyed by that at all. But a couple of things that I would point out here, as you mentioned, if you're doing personal stuff, if you're pushing things to this, it now has a lifespan as far as how long it will stay there on its own, unless you pay for an account. So do keep that in mind if you're looking for something. However, what I did want to point out is that, in some ways, people consider, a Docker a reputable source. So they have, and this isn't showing up very well because of the colors I chose, but they have a number of images that Docker creates versus random people on the internet create. Those are indicated by an underscore here in the URL.
Yes.
So you can be pretty confident that things that are official from Docker are likely safe, and things you can kind of run from the internet. I still don't necessarily recommend it unless it's like a base OS, like Fedora itself. But at HTTPD, for example, what I will often do is actually, just gonna guess here and hope that that's there. So what I will often do is actually go and take a look. Oh, they changed this around. We used to have the Docker file right here.
Oh, yeah, no, they've hidden it.
Okay. Well, so what I will often do is actually go, and so if it's not, maybe if it's the unofficial ones, so let's go back to our stupid telnet example.
Stupid telnet.
Here it is. So what I will often do is actually go and pull this Docker file, and then build that thing locally, so I know that what it says it is actually what it is, right? But I can at least leverage this content to make my life easier. So Docker Hub, you can push stuff to it, and like all other registries, you have to log into them first. But the other one we wanted to show you was not tech together, Quay.io, which is Quay. So, okay, let's talk about Quay for a second. The word Quay in English is pronounced key.
Key.
The people who started was it the company called Quay? But at least the project called Quay.
It was Project Quay at first, yeah.
Yeah. Decided that Quay for their thing would be pronounced Quay. So that's why I say Quay, even though it is technically supposed to be pronounced key, which I only learned a couple of years ago because all of my vocabulary I got from reading books, and the downside to reading books is that there's no pronunciation key.
Pronunciation, right? Yeah. Funny story. When I was in high school, what is it? Things Fall Apart, the classic African novel, right? About like I never had seen the word machete before. So I completely mispronounced that every time there was like a group reading in class.
Machete.
Yeah, I was like every time, but it was something different. It was like cube cuddle, right? Like every time it was something different.
Nice. So Narendev in the chat says if we click on tags, it will take us to the GitHub repo somehow.
Maybe.
I do not see anything that looks like a Docker. Well, I guess.
Oh, yeah, they've done that, which is annoying.
Yeah.
But,
not quite what I'm looking for, but you get the idea. So the point being is just I rarely trust any containers I get from the internet, which we have definitely talked about in the past. Yes. But in order to save myself some time, I will often use the Docker file that's there as a starting point. Technically speaking, you should probably go and review the licensing on the Docker file if you are planning on using it directly. But using it as a hint to what you want, I mean, half the time, or some portion of the time, I keep losing the Quay window. I don't know why. Yeah, it's really like losing it on me. But a good chunk of the time, it's not going to show me the, or it's not going to use the base OS that I want. So I have to switch that around, and then different Linuxes, of course, occasionally, not consistently, but occasionally use different names for the different packages. So, for example, Apache versus HTTPD.
Yes. And it's Apache 2.
Or Apache 2 even,
right?
And not to mention completely different layouts on disk once they're installed. But point being is that, I often will end up wanting to do something different, but it gives me a good hint for where to start.
Right.
So Quay.io lets you go and push and pull your own containers. And let's see, where do I find login information?
On Quay?
Yes. My guess is
in the tutorial, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I have not very much used Quay, or I swear to God I did, but it seems to be MIA, or maybe I had a different account or something. So let's call this.
I know it's there in the initial, like as a brand new user kind of thing. Like the new user experience is kind of explanatory, but I don't know if a long time.
Well, I saw it under the tutorial. I was just going to guess because, why would you read the directions?
Right. Why read directions?
So we're just going to do an empty repository. And I don't know why the fonts are so off. I feel like I have this zoomed in, but
You
I don't.
need to like refresh or something.
Yeah. But it seems like I was noticing this on a different page too.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's like I'm zoomed in or something.
No, hit. There you go. That looks fine.
Yeah, it fixed
There
it
you go.
when I
Yeah.
zoomed. I don't know.
Weird.
Oh, I might have this browser set to automatically zoom to make it
Oh,
better
for the show or whatever.
for the
Yeah,
show.
that
Yeah.
makes sense.
So let's see. And then, so what I can do is push to it by using something really obvious. So the thing that gets tricky about this is that you need to tag things for the target. And so let's explain tags just a little bit. So here you'll see that this guy has a tag of latest, but this is actually also referred to as a tag a lot of the time, even though it's actually a name. So did you have a comment, Chris? Oh no, sorry. So even though it says repository, it's also referred to as a tag. So what I can do is say, okay, so I got this local host, how do I, and if you don't have a name, so you just have a none here, you can use this guy here. So the image ID. So I'm going to use the name of this one here, assuming if I could actually click. All right. And then I'm going to tag that guy as, I don't know, new. And what's going to happen is now I have a new how do I, except if you notice it has the exact same image ID. And if I do RMI, okay, so remove image of the new how do I, all it does is untag it, it calls it, even though weirdly it's under the repository flag and not the tag flag, but or column rather. But if you notice it's gone, but my how do I one is still there. So in order to make this work with something like, actually, let's do sudo podman images with something like Quay, we need to tag as, and what I was hoping to see was we should have to do quay.io/langdon/perfect tools. So I'm going to guess that. We can always change it. We can have as many tags as we want, right? Because they're just labels on the same tarball. And what did I call it? Perfect tools.
So
All right.
ASDF Monkey is pointing out a very good thing in chat here, right? Like the OCI spec for creating a registry is not that complex. So you can really just do it with a regular web server, right? Like it's
as a read-only registry, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's slightly more difficult to do a
read-write. Yeah. So you got to have authentication and everything else. But a read-only registry, yeah, you could totally set up with just an Nginx server and off you go, right?
Exactly. And there are lots of them. And so running your own is actually not too big a deal.
Not
on RHEL 7, you can actually run a supported instance of Quay as well. I believe just included in a normal subscription. On RHEL 8, it is currently not supported, but there's I'm hopeful that is going to change. But we're also going to talk about the OpenShift registry as another way to do this, but we probably won't cover that today. Because you have to set some flags on the OpenShift registry. But so the way OpenShift works, as does Kubernetes, it actually has an internal registry where it holds all of the containers you're deploying into your ecosystem. But you don't have to just use that registry from inside OpenShift. You can also use it from outside OpenShift because it's just, to ASDF Monkey's point, right? It's just a web server that happens to be sending and pulling tarballs. So that's how I often will set up a local network one. because like many straightforward looking simple software to write, it is actually more, or in practice, if you want something that is performant and scalable, it is not quite as simple to write. So for example, a package manager, actually had a student at Boston University who decided they wanted to write a new package manager, because apparently that's a coming of age
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Um,
No, it's actually like dependency management, package management, like those are like now like
It
test
is-
things, right? Like
it
those
is
are like the
way
use case.
harder than it looks.
Yeah.
It is, and the worst part about it is so I actually wrote a database years ago to discover the same problem, which is it's very, very easy to write a very bad one. It is incredibly hard to write a good one.
It's really easy to write bad software is what I tell people. Like
Well,
when they ask me, should I get my kid into like software development, that kind of thing? And normally I tell them it's really easy to write bad software. So if they're going to get into this, they need to get into this like wholeheartedly.
Well, the thing that's hard for, I think, an experienced developer with certain classes of software, package managers, databases, and when I say package manager, I kind of include like things like registries and repositories and all that. They're all of the same ilk. Databases, source control. There's one more too that I use as an example, is that if you're an experienced developer, it looks like an easy problem. And you go and build one, and then, oh my God, you realize how terrible a job you've done so far.
Hard this could be.
Yeah. Yes. So back in the day, I needed an in-RAM database in Java, and they didn't exist, and so I ended up writing one for doing natural language correction, like voice recognition correction. Yeah, so it was not pretty, but it worked. So good enough. All right, so back to our point, and I don't want to delete my own permissions. What I'm looking for is my login, which let's just try logging in. So I'm going to sudo. Okay, so this one's a little weird too. Oh boy. So for all of these registries to push to them intuitively enough, you have to log in. So I'm going to do some guessing, and hopefully I will be correct. Let me make sure I'm getting the username or the password correct, though.
So Christian says he wants to use Langdon SQL, and I say I want to use Langdon SQL too because I might be able to understand it at this point. I feel like we've worked enough together that I can understand your SQL instrumentation.
Right. Well, funnily enough, my database didn't actually have a direct access language at all, so it didn't.
Of course not.
It was only an API. Because that's what it was for. Right?
That's what you do, right?
Yeah. Right. But it was in RAM. Actually, what was really interesting about that project was trying to do, because the problem with databases, right, is you want to cache what the next thing is going to be as much as possible.
Speed. Yeah.
And when you're talking about language, and what we were literally trying to do was take, like a sentence structure and then make corrections based on the sentence structure about what the next word should be when voice recognition got it wrong, right? But
when was this?
This was in 90.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. So this is
98.
Pretty bleeding edge. Like.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was funny because, like many software that I've gotten into, voice recognition until very recently always hated me. I was like the worst. Yeah. Like I didn't fit any of their models.
No.
So we used to use this was for mostly medical transcription, and we got about 85% accuracy out of the voice recognition itself, and then we would take the correction to try to get up to like 95, 99%, basically using English, or like looking at the language structure. Problem is, if you're trying to cache, knowing what the next word's going to be is as much a natural language correction problem in and of itself. So it was not as fast as I wanted it to be, because I could never really crack that caching problem. Mind you, I worked for GE Research and Development at the time, so that kind of made more sense. And
I didn't know you worked for GE Research and Development.
Yeah, I was technically I was a consultant, but
anyways, that's intense. But okay.
Yeah, so I left because the only way you could get an office was to have a PhD, and I wasn't in the mood to go get a PhD because I was tired of school at the time, and then I just kind of never got around to it. So going back to our regularly scheduled programming, so I logged into Quay.io. I typed I had the wrong password initially, so I used the correct password, and that worked. And if you notice, I'm using sudo. Even though I don't have to, but the reason I'm using sudo is because if you'll recall, our perfect tools container needs sudo to run. So the only place it's built is in root's Podman image repository, not in my main image repository. And then I just push it to Quay, and apparently my internet connection is not awesome.
Is somebody else on Twitch?
Exactly.
Is someone else streaming in your house?
Right. Could very well be. And then I'm hoping it is going to show up here when I refresh. I know there's no builds.
There we go.
But here is my image. And I think the SHA should be the same. So let's just take a look. DC9C. Oh no, I guess they must reshot. Okay, so it is now there. Well, it says it looks like it might still be cooking. Or no, it's going to be scanned. So whatever. So it's theoretically there. And so what I wanted to do was, so the reason we were talking about this, right, is that even though it's a public repository, I can do a couple of things. One, I can make that repository itself private, but I think that's only with paid accounts. So, we're just doing it public for the sake of argument, but I don't think it's terribly expensive, even if you wanted to make them private. Let's take a look.
I think it's like $5 or $10 a month. It's not much.
Yeah, it's so if you had stuff in your perfect tools container or whatever that was
proprietary, sensitive,
or
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
SSH keys, I would say, would be a really common problem, right? If you can find a way to not put that stuff in there, the better. But if you can't, for whatever reason, you can just make them private. So what we can do now, though, is because it's now sitting out in this registry land, right? We can jump. Let's see if I have a terminal open. Nope. I apparently have a lot of terminals, though. So even though this one's called rel 8 base, we're going to. Oh shoot! I don't know if my 7 is running. It is not. So let me start that guy. It should take like 2 seconds.
Okay. You have fast storage.
Yeah.
I say that because I tried to install OCP on 10K drives this weekend, and it was a very long and arduous process. And the certs expired while I was trying to install it, and it was just a nightmare. Yeah.
No, this rel 7 VM exists. I just had to start it.
Right. What I'm saying is you're probably using an SSD, and all of my boxes are tied up into streaming rigs that have SSDs, and I have to upgrade a server that has spinning disks to get SSDs. Yeah.
So what I can do now, though, is assuming I'm somewhere else in my data center. And now I'm on a rel 7 machine, is we can, oh my goodness, if I can type, how about Podman? We can now pull this guy over. And this is very close to the bone as a container goes, very close to the kernel, as we've talked about a bit last week. As the closer you get to the kernel, the more containers start getting a little wonky. So this may not work, but let's give it a try. Container, run label, run. Now, actually, before I do that, so now if I say Podman images, we have the Quay.io one.
Yeah.
So we can relabel that and make it like a little easier to use, right? So we can just say tag.
The long name.
Still be in my buffer.
Yeah.
And just call it Perfect Tools.
Mm-hmm.
So
and now we have tags, and
exactly.
It's just like a symlink, basically, right? Like,
right,
but it appears as a separate image.
Exactly. And in
but
some
if you
ways,
notice, the image ID is the same. Yeah.
Right. And actually, what I should have showed before is that if I delete this image, I will actually still have this one too.
Yes.
Even though, like, I showed the other way, like I created a new tag and deleted the new tag, but you can also create a new tag and delete the old tag if you don't want it around anymore. So obviously, that would be more of a pain here. But
Narendev is curious why you're using sudo between the various commands. Like,
so this I thought I explained this a little bit before, but I'm only using sudo for this particular container because if you remember, our Perfect Tools container needs a lot of priv for its access from the container into the host. All of this would work without sudo if I was using a different container or a different image, one that didn't need. If I was just doing HTTPD, for example,
right.
I wouldn't need sudo.
Yeah, but he's using privilege ports and stuff like that. So.
Right, exactly. The other thing I wanted to point out too is that now that I have used a different tag, let's say the one in Quay.io gets updated. If I do a pull on this guy, this one will remain the same. So do keep in mind that they will branch if you change
they
one.
They can diverge, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a trap you can fall into if you don't think about them as being largely separate things.
They are the same until you change one of them, and then they are different.
And here we are inside of our Perfect Tools container. We shipped it from the place where we built it up through Quay, and then we downloaded it onto a different operating system, because it's RHEL 7, not RHEL 8,
right.
And ran it, and it seems to be working just fine. So, and now I should have less, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a file that would be in here by default. How about password? So we have less, right? Less is not there by default, so we know that we're using our real one.
Yes.
And so that's distribution.
What else? What other packages
we did? MTR. That was a big one.
MTR. Yes, I love MTR. Yeah. Do
and
MTR
then we did
like
trace route to
redhat.com.
Oh, there you go. Will this work?
Yeah,
or do I need a dub?
No, that's redhat.com should work. It resolves. It redirects. Just as long as it has a DNS entry, it should take you there. Aha.
Curious about the routing.
Now we've hit the internal network.
Yes. Yes, routing. Akamai is your friend. So trace routes there, everything, kind of all that jazz is doing its thing. So that's kind of what we want to talk about is like, how do we distribute this from one place to another inside your data center? Again, this is public, so it may not work for all use cases, but I'm not sure if we'll do it next week, but soon we will do the same thing, except using the OpenShift registry that, with any luck, you already have in your data center and you can just use. Let's see. Anything else I should point out? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. There's a unrelated issue being discussed in chat. I'm just getting, I can't say your name, so please forgive me. Madersa, just send me an email, cshort@redhat.com. I'll get you routed to the right place. We'll get your question answered. Seems like a simple checkbox or something line is not getting written out or something in a config file for his problem. So yeah, your Perfect Tools container's built. You're distributing it. We talked about Skopeo. Do we want to mention that at all?
Oh, so yeah. So what we do is when we say Podman search, And let's say we do HTTPD. Now we should get a ton of results because everybody likes Apache.
Yeah.
And I thought we'd get a
builds their
little
own
better.
Apache container their special little way with all their fun things.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So what I want to show here quickly is that, like Red Hat even has a whole bunch. This one seems
But
to have
look, it has
Varnish front
Varnish
ending it.
with Rel 7. Yeah. I mean, we've got
Docker
tools.
has a bunch.
You
Fedora, I know, has a few too, but I'm not seeing them. Are we on Rail 8?
Are you on Rail 8?
Yes. I'm not seeing the Fedora ones, but they should be coming back too. I'm not sure why they're not. But so Skopeo
is that same containers configuration directory, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not in the container. It should be. Let's do less etc containers. So one thing to note though is that the search list and the registry list are different. So I may have put it in.
That's what I was getting at, right? Like they can be different lists.
But yeah, so I think if they are a secured registry, so like basically HTTPS versus HTTP, they only have to be in the search list and they should just show up. It could be, I don't know, I could be doing something stupid with Fedora. But going back to, I can't remember whose point it was, but if you wanted to make your own one and you want to front end it with just HTTP, you can do that by using an insecure registry here. Obviously, that has the trade-off of using an insecure registry.
Or you could go get some Let's Encrypt certs and make it secure.
Exactly. And in fact, you can, one of the things that you can search
for. Please contribute to Let's Encrypt. If you haven't heard of Let's Encrypt, please ping me on Twitter and I will tell you all about it.
Yes. So you'd probably have to investigate a bit what registry means here, like the Google foo on finding basically a container registry. I am 99% certain you can find a container image that already does Let's Encrypt plus container registry and done. You may have to build it yourself, but largely just done. And in fact, this looks like here's the one for
always review any Docker file that you run.
Right.
Because running crypto miners via Docker file is a thing.
Yes. Yeah. And so, but as we were talking about a while back, Podman is kind of a wrapper around.
Podman is a wrapper.
Run DMC. But it's also a wrapper around Vanilla Ice.
Right.
I had to. Called Skopeo. Let me make this hopefully a little easier to read. And basically, but Skopeo, I mean, Builder does too, but Skopeo has a bunch of other kind of commands, available commands related to kind of interrogating registries. And it's actually much more sophisticated than like Docker's search was, or at least it used to be, or at least Docker's used to be, because one of the things that you want to often be able to do is list tags. So let me see if I can make this work. Let's do Fedora minimal, just to minimize typing. Yeah. Okay, so I think you have to do this. What did we just said it was? Registry. Oh my goodness, I can't type. Fedora. Yeah. Okay. So the reason I want to. Okay. So first of all, you have to give it a protocol. The registry v2. I'm not really sure. Maybe I don't know. I actually haven't tried this in a long time. Is there an OCI protocol? No. I didn't think so. Yeah, it's only Docker. So I don't know if this is
it's a spec that has been adopted by OCI, I feel like, but it is a Docker written V2 spec. Yeah.
Right. And there should be a V1 accessible as well. but I think it will just work with the word Docker. Like, I don't think you need to say Docker like v2, v1, or whatever.
It should, yeah.
So, but almost everything has actually made it to v2 at this point. Like, I haven't seen a v1 register in a while. Yeah. But what I want to show you is we have been almost entirely during this show only been using the default tag latest. But so Fedora current release version of Fedora is 32. I can't talk.
32.
And however, and so right now today, and this is the only thing that I kind of dislike, is it doesn't show synonyms, which would be nice. But if I call latest, what I get is actually 32, but labeled as the latest tag. However, if you notice, there are actually a version 34 out, a version 33 out, and they have them. So there should be. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so Fedora is actually in a weird transition state that it does every 6 months for like a month or two, or a month or so. Basically, the beta release of 33 is out, but 32 is still GA. So the bleeding edge version of Fedora right now is actually 34. So the version after the version we're about to release. So as a result, we have 3 different available versions at the moment. Actually, we actually have more than that. We have 5, which is the highest we ever have. So the oldest one that is still supported, which is 30. The next one back, which is also still supported, which is 31. Current, which is 32. 33, which is the one that will be released in October. And then 34, which is the one that will be released. Basically, they're referred to as the Halloween and Easter releases. So around Easter time next year. But I can't remember what the actual dates are, like what month it actually is. And then you also have another special keyword called rawhide, which is another Fedora thing, which is basically whatever the most recent version is. So 34, but also rolling. So it will also get immediate updates. But the point is, one of the things that you often want to do in your container. So in fact, in our umpty squat here, it would be much actually, because I don't know the actual answer here.
By the way, I shared a screenshot of your umpty-squat.txt file last week, and all my military buddies that worked with me and heard me say umpty-squat whatever a bajillion times really appreciated it.
Well, I not only included a video highlight of it from the last show, I also found where in Builda you can make a PR that would fix it to include it. So I may actually get to it, who knows? But I think I found the spot in the code and
is
put
that in the
link
notes?
to it. It's in the show notes. The link to it is in the show notes. Actually, we should sidebar real quick.
Yeah, like let's internet points it up because we are like after our time.
Yeah, I just noticed that too.
We kind of just been rolling.
All right, so find us on Twitter, find us on Discord. Yesterday, so you do receive sweet internet points for joining our Discord. Specifically, you need to join the Level Up Our channel.
Yeah.
If I found you in there, I sent you a private message with the code to go and get the points for that. If you didn't get a private message from me, message me and tell me, and I will send you the points code for that. Anybody who has filled that out did not get those points yet, so just fair warning, because I did it last night. So we mostly ended up talking about distribution. The show notes are in this place. And do you want me to grab the link?
Yeah, please handle that. Thank you.
Because
I never remember to put it in the right place. And
we are restreaming chat again, right?
Yes, that should be fixed. YouTube, we've had conversation with YouTubers today already. So yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a whole thing that I'm working on with Restream. Anyways.
And then I have some slightly bad news. I made a calculation error in last week's points.
Stop it.
So this is why it would be really nice if I had software to do this rather than me doing it by hand.
What do
But
you
details.
wait? Narinda had 600 points last week.
That is the error.
Yeah.
So I misallocated an extra 100 points to Narendev. He is still in the lead, but
True.
I was noticing that he would be getting a big bump from points if he had actually registered for points for 5 shows, and currently he has not. So and related
So
to
will
that,
he get his 100 points back too when he does that?
I don't think so. Those were a
Those are
mistake
lost
that I
points
fixed.
now.
Exactly. So, but
Jesus.
the other thing I did was I finally posted what the activities are that you get points for.
Yes.
So
thank you. I remember
basically,
reviewing the PR.
I had misallocated the attend any TLUH show. Basically, I gave that more than once to a couple people.
Okay.
I just screwed up. So that's fixed now. However,
Cool.
Narendev is on the bubble for having seen 5 shows.
But so this is where the context, I missed it, right? Like you say submit it here, but maybe if you put submit it after each one of these and like in parentheses, right? Like maybe that would help.
You mean
like submit it, like they have to do an action, right? Like
oh yeah, I should make it. Yeah, it's a little hard to say. Again, this is why actual software would be nice,
right?
But like this one, I have to do by hand. This one, I also have to do by hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I do for.
You do it all by hand. Don't lie.
Yeah, I pretty much do them all by hand, unless you find a code on the internet and submit that, or you attend a specific episode and then give out, and follow the code that we showed.
Narendev is asking, where does he submit?
So it's the same place. Oh, I didn't mean that.
Did you drop links already or not?
I have not. I was doing that right now. So let me drop the Discord link because there are points for that now.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, just Windows.
Discord link came through, no problem. So that's good.
And then here is the. Oh, yeah, sorry, I was misreading that. Okay, so there's the level up point form, and then the code for today's episode, or the easier one that you can also submit. If you want to get points from a prior show, you need to just go back and watch those shows, and during that stream, obviously, I go through this screen, and you will see that. As for the 5-show submission, that's what I was saying. I do those myself. So basically, I go and count the number of shows submitted codes, and I add you a code for the 5-show.
So all Narendev has to do is enter this code, and he gets this.
I think so. Yeah, because I think he has.
So you're going to tab because you're tabulating this by hand. So I'm assuming.
Correct. Well, it's not entirely. I mean, I do have a script that actually does the point calculation. But basically, I have to go in to each one and submit like this code or the attending any show code. To join the Discord one, you do yourself.
This highlights the problem of the world right now, right? Like, there's no great software for anything we're trying to do right now, and literally, we're duct taping and bubble gum, like all these different things together to make it work for you. Right? Like, there's no great live streaming software. There's no great live streaming anything. It's all like there's this one good tool here. There's a tool there. They don't work together. Try and make it work together. And that's what we're doing here on OpenShift TV is trying to make everything work together.
And like all good software, of course, mine primarily relies on a spreadsheet and then a Python script that does the actual point calculation.
Yeah, a spreadsheet and a script. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I will occasionally make mistakes. I actually was looking at the mistake I made and really don't understand how I made it, because it's like it was a really obvious one. But I I did make the mistake.
Were you working late at
apologize.
night again?
Perhaps. So yeah. So like I said, if you join the Discord and I don't send you a DM that says here's the code to go submit, please just ping me on Discord and I will send you the code. Excuse me. I was going to look into Discord to see if there was a way that if you join a channel, I could auto message you, but I haven't done that yet. So, so that might be automated, but
you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured. I just haven't figured it out, and I wasn't. A lot of the times, those are notifications that are public, whereas a DM, like in a lot of those tools, a DM, I haven't seen a DM before. So Narendev is flexing on the fact that he is going to have a lot of points next time.
He will have a ton of points next time. Yeah.
I will point out there is the option on the level up form to just say private, and if you say that for your name or like your nickname, I won't be
publicly
reporting
display your points. Yeah,
your points, right? But that could mean that there are some dark horses out there that you just are unaware of. So Narendev, you better keep it up if you want to, try to hold a lead.
Can you go from private to public to just like shock the snot?
Well, considering I'm doing it wicked manually, you could.
You would have to DM you, and you would just turn that off.
No, actually the way I do the sorting is actually by email address.
Okay.
So I would actually notice that, hey, all of a sudden it's not private anymore. It's now a Nick.
Cool.
And so I could in theory, I would in theory notice. If you wanted to be absolutely sure that it was true, you should DM me on Discord.
Yeah.
All
right.
Yeah, Christian points out my
you
wicked.
Already said wicked, and the show is complete.
And the show is complete. So
the points given, people educated on registries and how they work. You can use Skopeo. We didn't demonstrate it, but you can use Skopeo to copy from Docker Hub to Quay potentially, right? Like as like a pivot point, just write a script basically.
Oh, right.
For you.
Yeah.
That way you have.
You can do it with Podman too. I do that all the time.
You could totally do, since Podman is a wrapper, you can totally do that with either tool, and you can make that pivot to your new registry of choice if you're moving off of Docker Hub potentially with this tool very simply. Yeah.
Yes.
Not very simply. I say that as easy as possible today, right? Like, could this be easier? Yes, everything could be easier. But as easy as possibly today, you can do a quick registry pivot with this tool if you wanted.
Yes. And really writing any of those scripts, you can actually wrap Podman is how I actually normally do it.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen me do it before in the show. I haven't really commented on it too much, but I usually have a make file associated with any given container, one that has a build command, one that has a run command. But I've also have often in the make file a build and then tag and then deploy to registry. And I just do it all in one thing, and it's really no big deal. I apparently am failing today. But as just quickly to say was in the umpty-squat.txt, we're using UBI.8 or UBI8. We should, in fact, instead of being using latest, we should probably be picking a tag so that we know what version we're getting going forward. Chris, do you want to pitch anything about what else is happening this week, or should we wrap it? Because we're well over time today. And now he's throwing a basketball.
I threw some Velcro over at my father-in-law. Did it bounce? It hit Max's box and then bounced over here. I'm sorry, Dad. I'll get it in just a second. So, coming up later today, we've got an OpenShift Commons briefing here at noon Eastern, 1600 UTC, transactions in Kubernetes and OpenShift with Spencer Kimball from Cockroach Labs. And then the very first episode of Eric Jacobs' new show around gaming and video games and scaling and everything else. Scalable multiplayer game design with OpenShift premieres today. Eric is doing that at 2 p.m. Eastern, if I can read my calendar correctly, 1800 UTC. Yeah, 4. Yeah. Okay. So 1800 UTC. So please tune in for that. It'll be a really interesting show around like building game designing game services like to scale on OpenShift. So we feel like there's a lot of MMOs out there that are potentially, could gain a lot from the OpenShift platform, as we saw on our Agnes stream a few weeks ago. So if you go back in the archive, search for Agnes, Agones, it was surprisingly kind of just worked out of the box with just a couple quick tweaks, and boom, we were scaling with a real live, Kubernetes native game dev server. So it was pretty cool.
Also, one quick thing, if you're into gaming and are interested in some of the history of gaming, particularly how gaming used to be a very, not technically open source, but an open source endeavor back in the day, that podcast had a whole season where they talked about their basically they talk about the origin of multiplayer online games when they were text-based, and it's Command Line Heroes.
Yes.
So Command Line Heroes season 2, if I recall correctly, is basically all about the advent kind of the video game world and how it was a very like community oriented thing. If you got good enough at a particular online game, for example, you became what was often referred to as a wizard, whether it was a
whatever game
fantasy based game or not, and you actually contributed to the code about how the game worked,
Right.
and it was really very cool. So yeah, Command Line Heroes, and I think it was season 2, if you want to check it out. And they build a game, I believe, over the course of the season, which is open source and you can go contribute to.
So one last thing, and it's because I'm doing the recording for it today. There's a cool innovation on Kubernetes event coming up that the sales team wanted to use the OpenShift.tv format for. So I'm going to drop a link to that. You have to register for this, but Christian Hernandez, Jason Dobies, and I did the keynote. So that is definitely worth tuning in for. And I will be interviewing Clayton Coleman this afternoon for this very event. So yes, please tune in for that. We're working very hard on it to bring it up a level, right? Not to use the show name as a pun, but like, we're giving it a very much like OpenShift TV kind of spin to this event because people realize this is kind of cool and it's a very nice format for just providing information very naturally to people. So yeah. Check that out.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, check that out when you get a chance. I think it's on the 15th is when it actually like airs, 15th or 16th. I could have opened the actual page before I dropped it. I'm sorry, the 22nd and 23rd. It's a 2-day event, and it's designed for like, both ops and dev, right? Like, so how can we get along kind of thing. So yeah.
I think Dev Nation Day is the 15th.
The Dev Nation Day, that's 5th is the 15th. That's right. Next Monday is Dev Nation Day, and I don't have a link to that, sadly. So But if you search for Dev Nation Day, you'll find it on Google. Yeah. So yeah, gonna log off here. Got to find some Velcro I throw. So
well, you have a lovely day
joining us today, and yes, thank you, Langdon, for the experience and the learning. And I did learn something new today, so your streak continues. And we'll see you next time here on OpenShift TV. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks all.